agree with you. And I almost flinched because I know that's in my bio, but probably since that's been written, exactly what you said, we have found that more women in their 30s and 40s are looking at our platform as a place to go for clarity because the transitions are happening more rapidly. And the transitions are also like women want to prepare for them more.
Welcome to Lunch with Leaders, the podcast where we explore what it takes to lead, thrive, and create lasting impact. I'm Adesileju Dogalaya, a TEDx speaker, leadership strategist, and the founder of African Women in STEM. Each episode features insightful conversations with innovators, trailblazers, and leaders from around the world who are transforming cultures, redefining leadership, and shaping the future of work. Together, we'll share the stories, strategies, and mindsets that will empower women in STEM to amplify their visibility, influence, and impact. So if you're ready to lead boldly, amplify your voice, and help influence what leadership looks like for women in STEM, hit follow, share this podcast, and join us every week for impactful conversations, powerful stories, and practical strategies. We're back, and I'm so excited because I've waited for this for quite a while. So our guest today is Stephanie Georges. I'll go ahead and read her bio so you know how incredible she is. So Stephanie Georges is a seasoned executive and strategist with 4 decades of experience guiding organizations through disruption, reinvention, and large-scale transformation. She began her career as a top-ranked Wall Street analyst during the telecom deregulation era. She then moved into the C-suite roles in telecommunication and technology, where she led major transformations that drove strategic growth and market leadership. Stephanie brings deep expertise in developing solutions that align organizations around their mission, prioritizing users and their unmet needs to create measurable value. Really key. She's a Harvard Advanced Leadership Initiative Senior Fellow, and she's now co-creating the Meraki Dignity Project, a women's movement dedicated to restoring dignity, including an immersive AI-enabled platform for women over 50, navigating key life transitions with intention. So welcome to the show, Stephanie, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you.
Oh, I'm really thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, your project just, I love it. But let's just start and we'll get there, okay? So, I read your bio.
I'm following your lead.
Okay, well, it's a good thing that you trust me enough to follow my lead. So that's good. So reading your bio, you spent decades leading through disruption, leading companies through transformation, leading in corporate environments. And then you kind of started something new. I want you to tell us how you got there, but this is a new mission-driven venture that you're doing, the Meraki Project, which is how you're helping women really navigate life better. So can you tell us a bit more about how you transitioned into this? I'm sure it's not. So please tell us more.
Oh my gosh. I wish I could say it was this elegant, unmessy, moment that I woke up in the middle of the night and said, okay, I know what I'm going to do. But the reality is, like most of us, it was probably building over time. I was in the back of my mind without even knowing. I had been thinking about more and more, what's my purpose and what do I want to do and how do I want to make a difference? And as I was reflecting while you were reading my bio, it's always embarrassing to hear your own bio. As I was reflecting, as you were talking, I realized that part of the challenge for me and maybe other women like me is that whatever your role is at home, caregiving kids or caregiving parents or in a big corporate role or whatever, we as women tend to find purpose in what we're doing. We try to sort of see beyond the tactical parts of what we're doing. So I feel like one of the mixed blessings of my roles over the years, it gave me enough to feel like I had purpose, but not enough to truly satisfy me. And I think as I got more and more mature and more, frankly, older, and also realized at midlife, you realize, what am I doing? Is it what I want to be doing? I think over time, I started to realize that this wasn't giving me the joy that I had once had. And I will say that not only did I feel that was a disservice to me, which was the primary motivator, but I did feel it was a disservice to, frankly, the organization and the people around me, because I wasn't bringing my whole self into my work. And that's what got it started. Like I said, it wasn't a lightning bolt. It was just sort of chipping away little by little until there was a point where I felt the balance had tipped.
I was having a conversation with someone today, and she kind of mentioned something like this, which is that for most women, we're talking about women in STEM, and it's like you find yourself at work and you have this idea of what it means to be successful and where you want to go. Say you want to be a director, you want to be in the C suite. And somewhere along the line, things are not quite working out, or even if you're getting there, you feel that unease or dissatisfaction, but that we find it really hard to just step away because this is what we're supposed to do. This is where we're going. This is what it is. So when you talked about the fact that it was chipping away, it's more common than you think. That was the case for me. I absolutely loved my job once I didn't love my job, but it wasn't a one day thing. It started happening over time. So I'm so glad you brought this up.
I want to riff off of that for a second because I like what you said, and maybe I hadn't thought about it that way. So I do see that there is this expectation that we have of ourselves that creates a headwind for us to make that change and sort of betray our own instincts, right? Because it is this, I know I felt like, okay, I'm one of only a few women in the C-suite. So I have an obligation to sort of tough it out for other women. And I'm not suggesting we should abdicate from that. But I think that becomes, it's almost like riding a bike in the wrong gear. You're just, you're just fighting. And that's really when it became clear to me that I could try to change the system from within the system, or I could step out of the system and think about, okay, identify what are the bigger levers that I can make to change the system for women. And that's that. I think if you were picking up on what you said, there was this, I realized that me trying harder and living up to this expectation was not necessarily going to change things in the way that I hope to change things for other women.
And then just what you said again, I just started thinking about the fact that sometimes, even when we have a certain level of clarity, I call it false humility thing, makes you think, why me? I mean, it could be somebody else. I couldn't possibly. And it's frightening, and there are all kinds of reasons why we wouldn't do it, which is why I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation on this podcast, because my goal for people is to, when they experience what you have gone through and they see that what is not very different from mine. She didn't just miraculously wake up one day and have this like aha moment, or there wasn't this lightning bolt from the sky. It's just like normal everyday life happened, and then you just kind of made the decision. So this is very helpful and I love it. And women do experience, life transitions. I know you mentioned 50 in particular, but the reality is that it starts earlier than that, especially these days. Like there's a 30s crisis, 20s crisis, 40s crisis.
You know what? I agree with you. And I almost flinched because I know that's in my bio, but probably since that's been written, exactly what you said. We have found that more women in their 30s and 40s are looking at our platform as a place to go for clarity, because the transitions are happening more rapidly. And the transitions are also like women want to prepare for them more, right? Once you're in menopause or once you experience ageism in your career, it's a lot harder to make that pivot. I really do feel like our platform is one of the surprises we've had is how resonant it is for women that are younger, because they are experiencing their own transitions and because they're preparing for, whether they're watching their mentors or their moms or other women, they want to prepare for that in a different way.
Yeah, and I think also we're more self-aware. I mean, I keep going back to the pandemic, which is kind of again, you were forced to be home by yourself with yourself.
Mhm.
So we're a little bit more self-aware now. And to your point, it's like for people that are older, it was more like we didn't have that pause. So we kept going and going, and we tried to use work and responsibility to create distractions. But now that pause, everybody had to pause. And then you actually also had a chance to be very close to people that normally wouldn't be that close to, and kind of see how things were unraveling. And I'm guessing that also kind of made you wonder, okay, I don't want to wait until I get there. I had better start now. And also, the world is changing so much, so there's no age for crisis or all kinds of stuff to happen. Is what it is. So, can we talk a bit more about what you just said now, which is you set out to help a particular group of women, and now you're finding that people you didn't expect are
Yeah.
coming to your platform for solutions. How have you been helping them navigate these transitions and the shifts they have in their life, whether it's for their career or their identity or relationships, all of that happening at the same time?
I'm so glad you asked that question. And we didn't have the answer, and we still don't have the exact answer, because part of our whole mission and our values and everything that is undergirding Meraki and the Meraki
Mm,
Dignity Project is that this is an interdependent effort, that women
mm,
together will be able to support each other to help navigate the change. So that's an important element, and that there is no silver bullet, there's no magic formula for women to navigate the transition. However, what we've learned, there's a few things that we've learned. One is just picking up on what you just talked about. When we launched our alpha, which was in the wintertime around December, we had a very
mm.
small group, like 100 women on the platform, and it was very crude. And I'll tell you, we we launched it. We gave everyone the code to get on, and we didn't, it was anonymous, but within the first day we saw women getting on, spending a minute or two, and then dropping off one after the other. And my heart sank because I was like, failed, what's going on? Well, then what happened was we saw women coming back on, and exactly to your point, they realized the technology had trained them, trained all of us. Oh, I'm going to do an application. I'm going to answer questions. Boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, 3. I'll be done. I'll do the onboarding. And they started to answer those questions and realized they needed
Mm.
time. And what happened was women came back on. We didn't know who they were. We knew there was an IP address that matched. And they stayed on for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. They came back. And there was nothing necessarily prescriptive about what we were doing other than creating a safe space that allowed women to feel as though they could take the time to get clarity. And that was the first big aha for us, because as you can imagine, being in the world of AI and being in the world of technology, which is dominated by men,
Yeah.
and the funders are men as well, there's an aggressive push to have gamification and more and make people do things fast. And we felt so validated that women responded to a technology solution that allowed them to have time and space. That was a huge aha. The second aha we had, the second big learning early in our journey, but early in our journey that's really showing up in our product now, is that many solutions for women really are focused on one aspect of their life. So there'll be a health app or an exercise app or a financial services application or a caregiving application. And those are all wonderful, but no one was really looking at women from the perspective of what our research was telling us, which our research said is when they were navigating change or transition in their life, all aspects of their life were in flux. So when they were thinking about, here's an example, when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it kind of created a whole, how do I find a caregiver? What about my job? Do I need to move to where she lives and give up my career? Financially, how are we going to navigate this? Is this going to be something that I'm going to have to subsidize? What are her finances? How do we think about that? Relationship wise, what does that mean for my partner? How do we navigate this together? So all of those aspects, stress, all of those aspects of the transition happen at once. And so creating a place for women that allows them to get clarity in the way they're experiencing their challenge was something that we learned was missing.
I love that you said this because, again, the funders, mostly 19 whatever percent men.
We would resonate.
But it's true. So, like, again, because I had to transition from corporate to having my own business. And then there's always this thing about you have to be focused, you have to be focused, you have to have one thing, the one thing, and the one thing. If you're a woman, you know it's impossible for you to have the one thing just by virtue of you being a woman. You don't even have to be married or have children. You just have to be a woman. You're going to have friends. You're going to have community. You're going to have people at work. Everywhere you go, and they become part of your everyday. Like, men can be laser focused. I'm going to give you an example. So my sister-in-law, her husband was going to school to do his MBA. He went to work, came back and went into the study for like however long it took him to do his MBA. That was it. When she started doing her MBA, she had to worry about what the kids are going to do, where the kids are going to go. She'll call me, make arrangements. She'll bring the kids over. I'll go pick up the kids. Life didn't stop because she was doing an MBA. She didn't have the luxury of coming home from work and going into the study. She had to be a mom. She had to be a wife. She had to be a sister. She had to be, a daughter. I mean, none of that really stopped. She had to integrate all of that into her work. So to your point about when they start building these solutions, that's how they build the solutions. And then even when women come into the whole ecosystem, because they're looking to be funded and someone tells you, I'm not going to fund you unless you do something this way, we now start building, to your point, those solutions, right? At the end of the day, one woman is like in 18 different places trying to figure out how to get her life together.
I love that perspective. And I hadn't really thought about it that way. I 100% concur with you. I agree that funders have said we've had this challenge, and we know the statistics. 2% of venture capital funding goes to women-led organizations. I mean, all of those data aren't lying about the fact that women are the funnel for women-led enterprises is so narrow, and yet the success rate of women-led enterprises is so, they outperform so much more dramatically. And that could be partly because the funnel is so tight. But I do think, I'm stuttering over my words, I do agree that the negative, like, Stephanie, this is too big. This is too big. You can't do this. You need to narrow it. You need to focus on one thing. Has been and continues to be a reprise. And it's only been enlightened funders that really appreciate that you're looking at it through the lens of the user. And I will say the lesson that or my only advice to women or men listening on this podcast is resist the temptation to, like, if you believe in your idea and you have the research to support it, just keep going. Like, that is critical because you're trying to solve a problem. I had not thought about the fact that women are multitaskers, or however we want to describe it, and that makes us more comfortable doing something that is multidimensional. It's a really interesting insight.
Yeah, it is. And then also, because I was having a meeting yesterday with some members of my community that kind of support some of the programs that we have. And they were talking about our two main programs. And then somebody was like, what about this other one? I was like, yes, I know. Because to your point, it's not one thing. All of this affect our life. I thought about it, but it's just, there's this one me and a few of you, and we can't really do all this stuff. But I'm like, this is where we're going. We're going to a point where, because I look at our lives holistically, our health is there, finances are there, wellness, career, all of these things are part of our life, relationships, but if you work in the corporate world of these days, it's like everything else doesn't matter. It's just work. It's business. It's all. I'm like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by it's not just business? Because people's lives are at stake. Or you're a product or a service that you want people to you. So it's never just business, but for some reason, it's just been carrying that over time. So we can talk about this for like the next 5 hours and we won't get anywhere because this is so deep. Okay. But I want you to touch on dignity because that is one thing that, again, I was just having a conversation with someone about expectations, and it doesn't matter where you're from. In general, it happens to women more across cultures and in the culture of the workplace that you feel the need to almost kind of apologize for anything that is not what someone thinks is supposed to be. There's a lot of focus on it when you get into the workplace. Do the hard work, work hard, produce, achieve, optimize, be efficient. Okay. But how does dignity come into that? Because again, I feel like, and I'm not the expert here, but it's almost like, at least for me, I'm navigating my career and trying to force myself at some point, it didn't really work, into this thing that somebody else, it was a male ability, had defined as how things are supposed to be. I kind of felt like I was losing. I'm going to use the word dignity now, but can we talk about that and what role does maintaining your dignity, centering your work around your dignity play? What should women focus on and why should women focus on that versus on the other metrics that are measured every day? And then you go back home and you feel bad about everything you're doing.
I'm really glad you asked. And dignity it's a big word and it's hard to define. So let's start there. But you were absolutely right. So one of the things about dignity is it is inherent. And each of us has it, and it cannot be taken away. It can be violated, it can be honored, but it cannot be taken away. So that's one important aspect of dignity, and I'll get into bringing that into the practical realm. But one thing I would love to share about dignity is that an expert on dignity, a woman named Dr. Donna Hicks, she did all this research, psychological research, and a dignity violation, when their dignity is violated, they're not honored, they are diminished, they're marginalized, it actually shows up in the brain in the same way as a physical injury. Just imagine that. So when you are in a workplace and you're marginalizing a coworker or not honoring their dignity, acknowledging them, allowing them to be seen, that it is equivalent to physically harming them. So that's kind of thinking about that was pretty stunning to me. And so I think that as a grounding, as a foundation. The other thing that, getting back to dignity being inherent, when we started on this work, it was 2 years ago. You can imagine the climate, the political climate, the social climate out there. We were realizing that the narrative around equity for women, equity for marginalized people had been co-opted. It had been translated into, if you win, I lose, like a zero-sum game. So if women get promoted, men are suffering. And you can just take it to any marginalized group, right? So the word equity was sort of broken. And we really felt that if we could reframe the narrative around dignity, it would give us the ability for people to listen more carefully, because who's going to argue about treating people with dignity in the workplace? Equity might feel like wait a minute, it's going to hurt me. Even though I believe in equity, I'm worried about my own job, right? Whereas dignity started to allow us to have a different frame. And then the last piece about dignity that I'll say is that we felt in particular that, and this is how it relates to AI and technology, we felt that technology and increasingly AI was biased against women. Our research was saying that it created sort of standards for women to the conversation we were having earlier. In the workplace, you have to look like this, you have to dress like this, you have to be like a man, you have to do this. And the social platforms were reinforcing that. And the AI algorithms were reinforcing it because they've been designed by men. So when you search for heart attack symptoms on AI, you get the symptoms of a man. You don't get the symptoms of a woman. And just last week, I was reading and then I tested it myself. You put menopause in one of the LLMs and it censors it. So it felt to us that creating a dignified space that was building an AI platform that had AI that honored women was even more powerful than an equitable space. So that's probably way more of an answer than you wanted, but I felt there were three big elements to our thinking around dignity. How do we change the narrative around equity? Who can argue against dignity? And then how do we create a dignified space in a world where there's so much bias against women, particularly in technology?
Wow, this is so deep. Thank you so much for that. We're going to take a pause now to get a message from our sponsors, and we will be
Okay.
We are back. I really love this mention of AI because, okay, so I went to this event, wonderful event. One of the panelists actually just said that AI is an equalizer. So something about that AI is not biased because we're talking about hiring. And he just basically made the case for AI. And because I was raised well by my mother, I didn't shout out, for whom? But that was I screamed that in my brain, and I'm thinking, but he will never get it, because he's never gonna go and type menopause and have that censored. He's never gonna go try to figure out the actual symptoms of heart attack and get the symptoms for a woman, which can be anything from like my toe aches to my finger aches. It's not that obvious for men. But I don't think maybe there are people that are doing it. We talk about AI ethics and so on, but how you just described it, in that you're trying to build this AI platform that will allow women to have their dignity. Do you know how insulting it is for me to go to try to find something that will help me with my health and I get blocked or censored? Just think about the feeling. That means I don't matter. And not just I don't matter now, there's something wrong with me. I'm breaking some kind of rule. It's just a whole thing.
I agree.
Well,
And I think, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just, because you touched on a point that's extremely important, and I could put some tangible stories around it. But so AI, it may not even be intentional. So I think if you look at it, AI is not predictive. It basically is based on what happened in history. So if 23% of women are represented in clinical studies, which is about the number, then the data that AI or chat or LLM is going to provide to a woman asking a question about health is going to be 80% male influenced. And the fact that there's so limited the amount of research that's on menopause, on PCOS, on endometriosis, those examples, which are so prevalent among women and women have been suffering with them, that research is only beginning. So the opportunity to filter, not censor, but filter the large language model by creating a layer of intelligence sitting on top of it, so that when you go into the LLM and you ask a question and you tag into it, we can look at it at Meraki. We can look at it and say, here is the answer based on women-informed research. So we can filter out, to the best of our ability, that insight, so that you as a woman are accessing information that's woman informed. And that's a lot of work and it's a lot of effort and it takes a ton of time. And other organizations are doing this, so we're not alone. And I think it's going to take a village. But I think that the large language models have no incentive to do this because they're looking at serving the broad population with sort of general responses. And we're basically trying to curate that to support a cohort that is, whose information and access to information is biased. Here's a really simple example to your colleague that you were talking about. When a hiring manager hires a woman and they're using an AI tool, when they go into the AI tool and come up with an offer for the woman, the offer, as long as if they identify that it's a woman, just as part of the offer letter, AI will serve up a salary that's 80 cents on the dollar, because historically, women have been paid 80 cents on the dollar. So those things are changing and organizations are changing that, but it's slow and there's little incentive unless your mission is focused on being responsive and serving women as a cohort.
Yeah. And, as you're speaking, and just kind of going back to why you're doing what you're doing right now, why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, why a lot of women kind of left corporate and doing the things that they're doing. So I see there's a lot of opportunity here. Because if you really think about it, which is what I always say in my community, women are 50% of the population on an average day. So, yes, because of where the money resides, we don't have certain privileges. But if we see an opportunity like this, if we can believe that us being 50% of the population actually means something, and we focus on this, we can get to where we want to get to. So, for example, that kind of ties back to we talked about funding earlier. And I've always, in my mind, because I'm Nigerian, and I remember like my uncle, and way back when, a whole village would put money together and send somebody to school overseas and things like that. They didn't have a lot of money. There wasn't a scholarship fund. There wasn't an endowment from a rich family. I still believe that. So I'm like, yes, we may not have $1 billion to give you 100 million, but if we have 100,000 people, 100 million people, 1 million people giving $1, it can still equate to the same thing. But there's already this resignation of we don't have much power, so we don't even do anything. So to your point, we will get there, but the reason why we're having this conversation right now is that I'm hoping that people are listening and realizing that there is opportunity, and you just have to believe it enough and find your people.
I want to put an exclamation point on what you just said because I feel really passionate about power. And I think that is at the core of the opportunity. And I would push back on you a little bit and say, I actually think the moment is now. Here's why. While individually, women may not have wealth, in aggregate, the wealth transfer that's happening there's a $98 trillion wealth transfer that's happening. 40 trillion of it is going to women. Now, individually, that may not feel like a lot, but collectively, women have financial, economic power like they've never had before. Secondly, women are more educated than they've ever been. The majority of people graduating from higher ed are women. I think the numbers range from 50 to 55%. Third, women are outliving men, right? So they have greater longevity. There's a health issue. Their health span is not as good as their lifespan. They're outliving men. So if you take just those elements, we collectively are a powerful cohort that people are trying to figure out how to serve better. They may not realize they need to serve women better, but I think we collectively as women, if we can coalesce our power, we can create a movement because our collective desires, our collective needs, our collective ways we want to be served in a corporate environment, in a consumer environment, in a financial services environment is really predicated on us wielding our power. So that's my story. And I actually think we're at a moment where these factors have never been stronger.
Thank you for bringing that up. I actually thought about, have you heard about Show Her the Money movement?
Show her the money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They talk about this all the time. And the biggest thing with what they're doing is also educating women because, yes, there's a transfer of wealth. I don't know if you heard of this story about the woman in New York that, her husband died and she found out they had all this money and then she just gave it away and paid everybody's tuition. It's just so frustrating because it's like, so we've been living this way and then, at least she did something, but most people get that money and they don't know what to do with it because their entire life, in their married life, they never were invited. And, it was a culture then. Women don't talk about money because it's crass and it's unbecoming, so you never really learn. So the biggest thing now is as the wealth is being transferred, that women can find the right circles so that they can learn enough to make the right decisions with the humongous amount of money, $43 million. Oh my
Imagine.
goodness.
I mean, the number one thing that women do when their husband dies, not to be more, but women who suddenly become widowed, they fire their financial planner. That is because the financial planner does not speak to them. And exactly to your point, has not spoken to them. Women's behavior is very different. They are much more philanthropic. They
Mhm.
invest differently. They're just different behaviors that the financial services system has not yet really paid attention to, respected, dignified, whatever the right word you want to use.
Mhm.
That is one of the reasons our platform is so focused on not just one aspect. When you're going through that moment, if that change is happening for you, whatever is precipitating it, the health
Yeah.
event, where can you get clarity around how do I deal with this money that I have? Or should I leave my job? Do I have enough money? Should I tap into my 401k? Should I take Social Security? All those questions, you can find answers to them, but no one really provides them in a context of, I'm going through this moment of change and I have all these things coming to me at once. So, agree with you 100%.
I think that's also why I love the work that you're doing, because what you said is very true. Because of the way these financial services systems are set up, even when they mean well, they don't talk to you in a way that is productive. So finding organizations like yours, or finding other women that are actually working towards this, is what everybody needs to do right now. And that's why we're here having this conversation and talking about these things. In your work, your Meraki is 2 years old, right? However, I'm pretty sure that you're still growing and you're still getting information from the women that are in the community using the system. But looking back at where you started and where you are now, what are you seeing are the gaps that you feel that you need to focus on more? Maybe they actually supported why you started in the first place, or maybe you're finding out something very different because you're here to solve a problem. So, what is that problem? And what are you seeing, and how are you planning on doing that?
Great question. And we are learning a ton. I mean, so first of all, when we started, we had no idea that this would have an AI component. And we resisted for a while because there was a lot of concern around that. But one of the things that we've learned through our alpha and our beta, so through our early iterations of our product, which is now in full on beta, and we have women all over it, is the desire for peer to peer wisdom. We thought that community would be important, but we didn't realize how important it would be. The way it works is women come onto our platform, they onboard to a few questions, and then they get a visualization of where they are. Like, here's where you are. And then they can set up milestones for themselves. They can create goals. They may not want goals, but as they sort of see, like, this is where I am, this is where I need resources. And the platform, our AI agent, we call her your AI guide,
Mhm.
Sophie, she will serve you up very personalized resources. That was one thing. We didn't realize how personal people really wanted those. So we've been really working on improving that. I would say in the beginning, it was pretty general. Now we're finding women really do want to dig in and learn and have it at their disposal, like when they want it. So that was one big learning. Women are demanding and they really want the right. And if we serve them up something that doesn't seem like we listen to them, it's hard to regain that trust. We've been able to, the latest beta we did, we found that we get the top scores on trust and safety, and private was the most important thing for us. So part of that was just recognizing that women are discriminating customers about feeling as though they're not being sold to, or when they want to be in a safe space. The other thing, which I started to allude to, is while people want clinical and evidence based resources, where they really hang out on our platform is in the communities. They want to feel like they're not the only one. So the stories that people tell in our communities are so vulnerable and thoughtful and helpful and insightful, and they're not clinical. They're just, I've been there, I hear you, here's some things that worked for me. So what we've learned is that women come for the resources to get clarity, but they stay for the community. And that's our ability to bring intelligence together with community wisdom has been a really eye-opening learning for us.
Yeah, that's incredible. And again, it's kind of how we're wired, but there's something. I have a friend of mine, he's a speaker, and one of his last keynote, he was kind of talking about the fact that when you get into the workplace, the way you are assessed forces you to be very individualistic and focus on yourself. But at the same time, they're asking you to work in a team for the team and let the team do things together. So the two don't go well together. And I also read somewhere it was kind of like a transition from the way work was before we started finding ourselves in environments where we had to interact the way we're interacting right now. So we still keep the thing where if I'm producing this widget and that's all I'm doing, I don't necessarily have to interact with anybody. And then bring that into a workplace where collaboration is key, but then you still judge people by how much they do not collaborate with anyone. It's all very, and again, back to if a woman was doing, they would have figured it out a long time ago, but for some reason, we just kind of set these things and we don't really bother to assess to see if it's working.
So true. And look, I think that is so true, and that women also, and women feel that there's no place to be vulnerable in the workplace. To your point, there's this sort of expectation. And I think sometimes, I was just hanging out. There's an amazing group of women. There's this little beach community that is nearby where I live. And these women who are in their 50s all the way to mid 80s jump into the cold water in the Northeast
Ooh.
every morning. And they've been doing it for years. And some days there are 5 of them, some days there's 20 of them. And it's just, somebody goes every day. And what's so interesting to me, and back to sort of what you're saying, is in the little conversations before you jump in and in the little, everybody's nervous. It's a little titillating, oh my God, it's going to be cold. Like today, one woman was like, I don't know, I really need to drink less wine. Anybody have any clues on how to do that? And if you said that at work, or if you said something that was so vulnerable in a workplace, I think women are just discouraged. To your point, there's this expectation that you're going to be this, you're going to be this kind of type, you're not going to be vulnerable, partly because there's no women to share that with, and partly because men really don't know sometimes what to do with that information. Oh my God, I had hot flashes last night. I couldn't sleep. I think that's really hard to say in the lesson. I think now people have started to get more comfortable saying those things. But so I do think I agree with you. And so community becomes that's creating a safe place, whether it's on the dock or in the coffee shop or on a Zoom like this, or in a community of women that are navigating transition. It's something we owe ourselves, we deserve, and we don't get enough of it.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I'm ever going to get enough of Meraki, so I'm going to follow you and follow your story.
Yay.
And I want to keep bringing things back to this community, but I want to ask you if the Meraki Dignity Project succeeds and becomes what you envision it to be, what will women experience differently because of what you have helped create?
Our mission, vision, is to change the world one woman at a time. That's pretty audacious. But if you sort of roll that back to the individual woman, if women can make intentional choices for the future they desire, not a financial choice, but a choice because they have clarity, they understand what their options are, that's a win, because that's Meraki. I mean, that's sort of where our name comes from. Meraki is, I can find what I want to do and pour my whole self into it and get the joy out of it. And it could be knitting. It could be running a company. It could be taking care of your grandkids. It could be raising dogs. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It is in the process of feeling that you actually have choice. And that's something I think we as women flirt with, but don't really yet own for ourselves.
And I mean, people take choice for granted, but for most women, we don't have a choice. And I'm going to tell you, whether it is self-imposed or imposed by culture or society, I'm Nigerian, the first daughter. There's something about being the first daughter. Like, A lot of things I don't come out and say I don't have a choice, I have to do it. But somewhere it's like I don't have a choice, I have to do it. I'm the president, this is my responsibility. And I met another lady that is from a totally different country, totally different culture. She's like, there's hers is even worse because she's the first granddaughter. So she's responsible for everything on her parents' side, and like her mom's side, her dad's side. With if anything happens, her uncles and aunties are going to look at her,
Yeah.
all the way down to her grandparents. And I'm like, okay, that's another layer of the same thing. So we talk about choice, and it seems very simple, but there's just so many layers to it. And I love that you're focused on women having the choice, because sometimes even those little things can actually expand into something much more. Because the whole goal of life is for us to be happy.
Exactly.
And choice gives us that.
And just having the ability to do something intentionally, not feeling that it's not that you're not giving to others. It's just the ability to feel that it is intentional.
Yeah.
And I agree.
I'm so happy. I'm happy, but I'm also sad. I know we're already here, but
go back to the power.
Oh my God. So Stephanie, can you tell us what you're working on right now and where people can find you to connect with you and collaborate with you?
Oh, well, we are in the throes of our advanced beta. So we have early access to our platform, and we invite everyone who listens to you to come on at my Meraki, MERAKI.ai. So mymeraki.ai. That's where you can find us. That's where you come onto the platform, on board, try it out. It's free. You just come in, and the more you're on there, the more we learn, the better we can get. So this is about co-creating. So we invite everyone who is intrigued or going through a transition or thinking about that to come and engage. And it's just test it out. The other place to get a sense of who we are and what we're doing is our Substack, which is Meraki Dignity. And there we tell stories of women navigating change. We have all kinds of insights and stories and narratives. We just did one on extraordinary, ordinary women that we highlighted. So it's a little easier entry. It's also free, but we love to just build a community of women where we can start to see each other and understand how we're all in this together. So those are my two places where you can find us and play with us.
Yeah. So we're going to put all this in the show notes. And please, everyone listening, make sure you find Stephanie, find My Meraki, either the Substack or mymeraki.ai, and follow and try things out. And again, don't even be scared. See, if you go and try it and you're not ready, you can go back to Substack and then come back again. Okay. It's true. Because I always like, if you don't, you can't say that you don't really like it if you haven't tried it. So just try it, first of all. And also follow us on LinkedIn, tag us and let us know what you learned today and what was most helpful. And if there's anything that you appreciate, please let us know. And one of the ways you can support this podcast is by following us on Apple or whatever platform you listen and leaving us a review. So that way we can get to reach more incredible, amazing women in this community. And men, we have 20% men listening to this podcast. So it's amazing. And we'll be shouting out in future episodes. But thank you so much, Stephanie. I really love this time together and I wish we could go on and on forever. But we'll find a reason to come back and have a conversation again.
Anytime. Would love it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And until next time, bye.